This coming week's Parsha is Parshat Yitro. Parshat Yitro contains the Aseres HaDibros. And the first of the Aseres HaDibros was starts off interesting. We have over here, Perek Chaf. It says, V'daber Elokim es kol advar ma'ela lemar. Hashem spoke all these words saying, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher hitzesicha me'eretz Mitzrayim and Beis Avodim. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of the land of Mitzrayim from house of slavery. Lo yeh lecha elokim acherim al panai. You should not have any other gods. L'sascha pesach v'chol tmuna asher b'shamayim. You shouldn't make any idols. Asher b'shamayim ma v'asher b'aretz mitachas asher b'mayim mitachas la'aretz. So let's take a look at the first of the Aseres HaDibros. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher tzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim Beis Avodim, and we find a lot of interesting questions over here. One of the questions is this a commandment? What is it telling us to do? Normally, if you think of a commandment, normally it says, do this or do not do this. What is the commandment of Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher tzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim? It sounds more like a statement. It's a statement. I come into a room and I proclaim, I am giving the shear for a bridewitz. So am I telling you to do something? Am I telling you not to do something? What am I saying? It's just a fact. I am giving the shear for a bridewitz. It's not doing anything. I'm not asking you to come to it. I'm not asking you not to come to it. What's the commandment over here? What should a person do when he hears this commandment or not to? Agrees to this question or disagrees? Agree?
No, because if you don't believe that very tenet, that I am Hashem, the rest won't make any impression on you.
Okay.
That's the ikar point. You must believe that point, otherwise everything follows.
So if you were stating it, how would you say it? Maybe Zohar, or you'd say, Ta'amin sha'anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Or I don't know how you'd say it in Lashon HaKodesh, but in modern Hebrew we'd say, Kol echad ve'echad b'Yisrael tzarech lahamin b'liboy, or leida b'liboy, whatever, amuna, yediyah, whatever. He should know in his heart that Hashem is, that I am Hashem. Right? Something like that. Or v'havtas Hashem Elokecha, you should love. Right? I don't know exactly how to write it, but I'm sure Hashem could. So that's the first question. Another question we could discuss. Not all of them are going to have the same answers. Just a number of different questions to discuss, and we'll try to go through the topics. Another question: if it is something that sounds like something that's sort of like a prerequisite for the Torah, so maybe it should have been put in the beginning of the Torah. Why is it being put like halfway through Shemos? Why over here? Another question: why does it say Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher hitzesicha me'eretz Mitzrayim? Maybe it should have said Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher barasi shamayim v'aretz. Hashem created the whole world. I mean, He took us out of Mitzrayim, but He also created the world. He created us. He created the world. He created us. Everything in it. All comes from Hashem. Another question: Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher tzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi beis avodim. Why does it say two things? Me'eretz Mitzrayim mi beis avodim. Why does it have to say it twice? Let's sort of say two things. So, in order to answer some of these questions, so we're going to have to do something. I didn't have a chance to staple it, so we'll have to pass them out separately. So there's a very interesting machlokes over here between. Oh, I left that one alone. Gotcha. There's a very interesting machlokes over here about this first of the Aseres HaDibros. So let's take a look at the Rambam. There it is. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos. Wait, I need one actually. So the Rambam has a sefer called Sefer HaMitzvos, where he counts all the mitzvahs in the Torah. And he has a lot of different hakdamas to how he determines what's a mitzvah. But then he says like this, Va'ata azchil on top. Va'ata azchil, now I'll start. Lizkor mitzvah be'ezras shaka. Lizkor mitzvah. I'll start to count each mitzvah with the help of Hashem. Ha-mitzvah harishona, the first mitzvah, he had tzivui asher tzivonu, that's the commandment. Listen to this. Asher tzivonu, that Hashem commanded us. Lahamin ha'alikus, to believe in Hashem, to believe in God. Hu shenamin sheyesh sham Allah b'siba, there's something above and something that controls. I won't get into all these things here. Hu ha'poel l'chol nemtzois, it's what causes everything that happens. Hu amri yisparach anoiche Hashem aleikecha, and that is the commandment, I am Hashem your God. Ubesayf Gemara Makkos, at the end of Makkos, Amrut, and the Rambam is trying to bring a proof that this is one of the mitzvahs. Because we're going to see in a second that not everyone agrees to this. And therefore he brings a proof. Ubesayf Gemara Makkos, Amrut, Taryag mitzvahs nemer l'Moshe B'Sinai. There were 613 mitzvahs said to Moshe B'Sinai. Mikra, what's the pasuk? Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Torah was commanded to Moshe. Minyan Torah, the number of Torah, the gematria of Torah is 611. That's the Gemara Makkos. The Hikshu, and the Gemara asks, Hikshu has ever Torah gematria hachi avoy, shis me'ev chatzri avoy. Torah is not 613. Torah is 611. So how do you take 611 and turn it to 613? Well, it's that Tshuva, and the Gemara answers, Anoichi v'lo mepi agvura shamim. So it says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Torah Moshe commanded us, that 611 was from Moshe, and Anoichi and lo are mepi agvura. The first two was Hashem said. And that's why you have 613. 611 from Moshe, and 2 from Hashem. Hine kvar espar lecha, ki anoichi Hashem mechlal sheish mitzvahs shalosh esrei mitzvahs. This proves to you that anoichi Hashem is one of the 613 mitzvahs. Hu tzivui be'emunah. And what is the tzivui? Because it's not a tzivui. Remember, it's just a statement. I am Hashem, who took you out of Mitzrayim. It's a tzivui to believe in Hashem. So discussing the first question, we have the Rambam who's on Mr. Freeman, Gabi Freeman's side, who says, of course it's a mitzvah. It's first mitzvah in the Torah, number 1 mitzvah, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzitzicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. The Ramban brings down the Rambam, and he brings down, the first part, the Ramban is on the top. The Ramban has a sefer on the Sefer HaMitzvahs, where basically he analyzes everything the Rambam says and comments on it. So in the Sefer, so he starts up and he says, he brings down a Mechilta. So let's take a look. Amar HaKosev. See where it says Amar HaKosev? Go down a few more lines from there. It says Amar, it's on the right side. On the right, top right corner, take your finger down till it says Amar Mechilta. So it brings down a Mechilta, a Medrash. And the Medrash says like this. Lo yelecha lekim acher mal pana. You should not have other gods. Lama nemar. Why does it have to say that? Why does it have to say lo yelecha lekim acher mal pana? So first of all, what's the question? What do you mean? Why does it have to say that? To tell you not to have other gods. So it seems to be that the answer is, I saw some of the Mepharshim explain, because it already said Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. So obviously, the flip side is you can't have other gods. So the answer is like this. Since it says Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, mashal. Gives a mashal, the melech, a king. Shenichnas l'Medina, a king comes into Medina. Amr lo avodav, his servants say to him, Gzor aleim gzeros, make for us gzeros. Amr lahem lav, no, I don't want to do that. Kishekiblu malchusai, if you're first mekabel my malchus, then extra aleim gzeros, then I'll make gzeros. Shemalchusai ena mekabel, because if you're not going to accept my malchus, zerusa hech mekaimim. So what does that mean? It's a mashal like this. I think I once heard someone explain a mashal in modern times, right? A person comes in and he says, right? He wants to be he says, we want him to be president. We're going to make you president, right? President, let's have the shul. So he says, What does it mean to be president? So it says, not president. I take it back. Not president. We're going to make you king of the shul. What does it mean to be king? King means that whatever I say happens, right? So they say, but before we decide who's going to be king, we're going to have a lot of people come in, and we're going to start to interview who's going to run it properly, right? So
this is a hypothetical.
This is a hypothetical, right?
Really hypothetical.
So who's going to run it properly? Who's going to give us the rules properly, right? So we say, okay, you know what? First tell us your rules, and then we'll decide if you're going to be king, right? So that's not a king. A king who could be challenged, a king who you only accept the rules based on whether you like them or not, whether it makes sense to you or not, that's not a king. That's more like a modern day president, right? He checks and balances. We could, the president maybe runs it, but he definitely doesn't make the rules. He's definitely not the boss. A king is a king. So the concept is that Hashem was saying to them, if you want me to make xeris for you, why did they come and ask for xeris? Because they understood that Hashem, right, as opposed to nowadays, why could no one ever become king of the shul? Because no one will believe that this guy, who's this guy, that he could know how to run the shul? I know how to run the shul better than him, right? Everyone in the shul knows how to run the shul better than the president, right? No?
That's why we don't have kings anymore.
That's why we don't have kings anymore. We have democracy. In democracy, the guy's not the king. He makes the rules, and everyone bashes him, and right? Because no one thinks that anyone else is better. But who could be a proper king? Hashem could be a king. Hashem understands everything. Hashem created everything. He knows how to be a king. But in order to be a king, the first step is you have to be makabel my malchus. Step number one is you have to be makabel my malchus. That's the prerequisite. If you're ready to be makabel my malchus, then I'll tell you my rules. But to first start with the rules doesn't make sense. You first have to be makabel my malchus. So kach amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem said to them, kach amar Malkum Yisrael, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem. First step. Lo yeh lecha elokim acherim al panai. Ani hu shegebaltem aleichem malchusai b'Mitzrayim. I'm the one who did it. Amrohein. They said yes. Kashem shegebaltem malchusai. Just like you makal my malchus. Kiblu gzeirosai. Now you should makal my gzeiros, and then it says lo yeh lecha. So Anochi Hashem Elokecha from the mechilta could be. It sounds like it's a prerequisite. The Baal Halachas Gedolos, the Bahag, and the Even Ezra and Rav Chazdoi, I think, and others, do not count it as one of the Targum mitzvahs. And the reason why they don't count it as one of the Targum mitzvahs is because it's a Hakdama to Kol HaTorah Kula. So where's the Ten Commandments, right? It's an interesting concept. Where's the Ten Commandments? And also, how do they deal with 611, 613? Right? The Gemara Makkah said, Torah tzivalanu Moshe, Torah the Gematria is 611. And the Gemara says, Anoich v'lo yelecha m'pi hagvura shemanim equals 613. So how do they do with that? So let's go down. Skip 2 lines in the Rambam. Vanir midaitoi, and vanir to the das shalabal halachas she'ein minyan targum mitzvahs. He's explaining why he argues on the Rambam. It says ein targum mitzvahs el gzeirosav yisbarach. Only if it's a decree. Shegazer aleinu lases to do something or menanu or stops or shloi nasa. Aval ha'amuna b'mitziasa yisbarach, but believing in Hashem. That he showed us through his signs and his wonders, revealing himself, who are ikar v'ashorish, that's the source and the root. And everything comes from there. Lo yimna b'cheshbona, it doesn't get counted. And that's what the Gemara said. Put on us xeris. No, I can't give you xeris. Because after you call malchus, then exile xeris. Also, kabbalah malchus inyan b'fnei atzma. So kabbalah malchus is its own concept. But mitzvah xeris me'ita yisala me'inyanach. That's another thing. Okay, I made a mistake. That was an important part. But then jump down to Uladas Azu, and that's not where he answers the question of 611. See where it says Uladas Azu, the next paragraph? Uladas Azu, Masha Amar B'Tshuvas Hash'ela Torah, that Sheish Meis Echad Aser, and the Gemara answers, Anoichiv Lo Yelechav V'Yagvur Shamam, It comes out like this: the 10 Commandments, Anoich Hashem Elokecha, is a prerequisite. And now included in Lo Yeh Lecha is two things. Because if you look back to the page before, I actually did not. Included in the thing before. So there's two things. One is I didn't bring down the last psukim, but they're on the bottom. So on the bottom of the page, the pasuk says that it has it. It says, "Lo yilecha akim achem al panai." Do not have other gods. L'safcha pesachot. Do not create for yourself idols. So there's one rule: is you should not own and you should not create idols. And you should not bow down to them. You should not serve them. That's a separate law. So there's two lavim. One is you should not own idols. You should not make them. You should not own them. And the other one is even if it's someone else's, you should not bow down to them and you should not serve them. So when we say Anoich Lo Yilecha is included, it doesn't mean Anoichi 1 and Lo Yilecha 2. It means those two, that whole sentence, that whole psukim, which is about 5 psukim, all came from Hashem, and included in there is 2 of the mitzvahs. That's how the Bahag learns.
That won't fix the cheshbon of 611 and 6.
Yeah, because you have Lo Yisascha Pesel, don't make a pesel.
Those weren't included in the 611?
No, because Anoich and Lo Yilecha means all the way until the next stop of the paragraph, which is when it says Lo Yisisa Shem Hashav. That whole thing Hashem said. It's one statement. It is. There's no break in the paragraph either. So what Hashem said was those 5 psukim, and included in those 5 psukim was two mitzvahs. Anoichi and Lo Yilecha, do not have gods and do not bow down to God.
And the Rambam wouldn't break them up into 2.
And the question is why the Rambam does not break them up into 2.
Right.
The Ramban talks about that also. Okay, so first point to discuss is that there's an interesting, the first point to bring out over here, just to answer the first question, which was, is Anoichi a mitzvah, or is it just sort of a statement? So the answer is we have a big machlekes rishonim over here. According to the Rambam, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah, and according to the Bahag and Ibn Ezra and others, it's not a mitzvah, but it's a prerequisite to call Torah Kula. I'm not sure, I didn't see this inside, but I saw someone bring down an interesting concept from the Ibn Ezra. I think Rabbi will probably understand this better than me, but he says, just like you have by a 0, the number 10 is a 0 and a 1 before it. So he says Anoichi is like the 1 before the 0. It's not part of the counting, but it's like the 1 before the 0. In other words, it turns the 1 into a 10. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what he says. Okay, so that answers that question. Now, to go a little further, there's another interesting mechilta to answer another question. We'll come back to this question. There's another very interesting mechilta, another mashal. Here. No, not here. I keep going.
The 10 is a completion.
It's like it's 1 before the 0. It's not one of them, but it's like the 1 before the 0.
It makes it into a new 10.
Yeah, it could be.
How does it fit together? That this is the first mitzvah, and in Torah actually counts the first mitzvah, it's Pru Nevuah.
Right, or Chodesh Hazal, right. I think I'm going to get up there. I'll try to get up there. Okay, so the Mechilta says like this: Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Why wasn't Aseres HaDibros said in the beginning of the Torah? So the Mechilta asks the question: why did they say Aseres HaDibros first? Similar to your question, right? You're asking the question the other way. It says Pru first, but the Mechilta is asking the opposite. Not exactly your question. Why isn't this first? I'll give you a mashal. Someone comes into a country. Let me be king. They say to him, what you do for us? Why would we make you king? Who are you? Why should we make you king? So what does he do? He builds up a wall for them. He brings water in. He does wars. Now let me be king. Sure, we'll let you be king. Right? What's the point of a king? To make the place run properly. So if you could build up the city, put up defense mechanisms, and get the water coming in and fight our battles for us, and you run the city properly, so we're happy to let you be king. Kacha makom. Hoitzi Yisrael miMitzrayim. He took us out of Mitzrayim. Kara lahem es hayam. He separated the Yamsuf. Hayred lahem amon. He brought them on. Halam habe'er. He brought them the be'er, the water. Hegez lahem es haslav. He brought them the birds, meat. Aslam achametz amalek. Now, at this point, Amar lahem emlech aleichem. Let me be king. Amar loi hein ve'hein. Sure, we'll let you be king. So we see such a concept that to come in and say to become king, you have to first prove yourself, right? And that's why Hashem waited till this point to say Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that I took you out of Mitzrayim. So this also could be answers the question of, not exactly, but this connects to the other question that we asked. The question that we asked was, why doesn't it say Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher barasi shamayim v'aretz? I am Hashem who created the world. Why does Hashem pick the part of I am Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim? Why not the part of I am Hashem who created the whole world? The Chayot's even bigger than I took you out of Mitzrayim. So, similar to this, they say an answer, the Rishonim say an answer, or maybe the Chayim, I can't remember, but the Mefarshim say an answer that the Hashem creating the world was a creation for everybody. But Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim was when Hashem chose us. Was when Hashem turned us into Klal Yisrael. It's important to realize that going out of Mitzrayim was when we became Klal Yisrael. Was when we became Hashem's nation. When we became Klal Yisrael. So, similar to this. In other words, to say I'm Hashem who created the whole world, that's why you're king of the whole world. But to be an actual king on us, beprotius, more than on everyone else, and to give us your commandments, that comes of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, who took you out of Mitzrayim. And not only that, but to take it a step further, Mibeis Avodim. The Ramban says, I think, that Mibeis Avodim means that you were slaves before. So we are be'etzim slaves. When we went out of Avdus Mitzrayim, we didn't go out to freedom. We went out to Cheres, but Ein Cheres ela Misha, Ein Cheres ela Mi who's an Eved Hashem. If you're an Eved Hashem, we went from Avdus to Mitzrayim to being Avadayim, to being servants of Hashem. So Hashem was koineh us. By taking us out of Mitzrayim, He sort of, redeemed us from Mitzrayim into His own into His own Avdus. So we became Avadim to Hashem. And that's what Hashem's saying. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher tzichem eretz Mitzrayim mibeis avodim. You went from a beis avodim, and now you're my avodim. Now you're avadahem, and you have to listen to my gzeros. And if we don't listen to them, so we're being a parak all in the malchus of Hashem, but not only in the general malchus of Hashem, but in the malchus of Hashem that He picked Klal Yisrael as His chosen nation, and Klal Yisrael as to be His avodim.
Isn't it also that people recognize the most recent event? We talk about.
Yeah, that's another answer people give. But that answer. That is a valid answer. Okay, it is a valid answer. There are people who say that. It bothered me a little bit, although they do say for other things, it bothered me a little bit that that's temporary. I mean, I guess Hashem said it then, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a valid question, but the fact that nowadays, you're reading the Torah today, one's no more recent than the other, right? I mean, so there's another answer they say is not so much recent, but that they saw it with their eyes. Bria Shemayim V'aretz, no one could tell you 100% that they saw it, but Yetzias Mitzrayim, they saw it. And if you'll say, well, we didn't see, but it was passed down, our father saw and our father saw. No one was ever machash it. To have something where 600,000 people were there by more than that, 2 million people, and it's written in the Torah, and everyone's passed on, and no one ever came along and said, nowadays we have Holocaust deniers, which is crazy. That's only because nowadays somehow people are willing to deny reality. But no one was ever machish the concept of Yitzias Mitzrayim. I mean, nowadays they could do that too. Why not? They could just deny anything. Something that is the record and people see it, and people are still alive who were there, they could deny it. So, they're just crazy. But to deny something that was passed on, after generation, it's yedua, it's known. So that could be another answer. That's why it says Asher Tzichem Eretz Mitzrayim. So, okay, so just to review, so we're answering, number one, why does it say Mibeis Avodim as opposed to Meretz Mitzrayim? Because it's two steps. Number one, Hashem took us out of Meretz Mitzrayim, but also that it was Mibeis Avodim, and that therefore we became His Avodim. Number two, we're answering the question of why does it say Shetzich Meretz Mitzrayim as opposed to Shabras Shemaim V'Ar? It's one of two answers, either because they saw it in the past down, so we know it as a fact, as opposed to something that's more of a concept, or the other answer that we're trying to say is because that's when Hashem was kindness, and that's when Hashem showed us what He would do for us, and that's what sort of leads Him up to be Mekabel Our Malchus. Like the Mechilta says, someone says, I want to become king, tell him go fly a kite. If someone comes in and does everything for you and runs the country and takes over, and right, even theoretically, if somehow, which I don't know if it's possible, someone could walk into the shul and whatever problems there are, fix all the problems and run the whole shul exactly in a way that everyone's happy and everything's running smooth and there's no problems, right? Even then it could, what? Right. If it's possible, then probably people would let him be king too, right? So that's the concept. So, okay, that's another concept. So, okay, so let's talk about the Haggadah a little bit, which Mitzvah Shem on Tuesday night next week. I don't. Some people were here for this, some people weren't, but I try to give a series of shiurim before the Haggadah. So we try to just talk about Parshat Pshat through the Haggadah. We ask a lot of simple, basic questions, and we try to go through Parshat Pshat on the Haggadah. So if anyone wants, they're invited. Mitzvah Shem next Tuesday, or if you're on the call's email list, you'll see. But just to go through one question over here, and say a different answer than usual, but a geschmack answer, and which connects to this concept. So just pass this out. So everyone's, I'm sure, familiar with Manishtana. So in the Haggadah we start off, the son asks, Manishtana Alayla Azem, we call it Leilos. I didn't bring the whole thing down, I figure people probably know it. So we eat either chametz or matzah, Alayla Azeh, matzah, kulei matzah. No, yeah, kulei matzah. Right, so why? Right, we eat matzah, we eat mar. We dip twice. So basically, the son's asking four questions: why do we eat matzah? Why do we eat mar? Why do we dip twice? And why do we lean? So what's our answer? We were servants to Par Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out with a strong hand of His right with the outstretched arm. If Hashem would not have taken us out, we would still be Meshuvah to Par. Okay, we talked the whole answer, right? How does it answer the question? I asked you a question. Why do we eat matzah? What's the answer? Why do we eat mar? What's the answer? Why do we dip twice? I'll tell you what. I'll ask everyone a question. Everyone's going to hopefully have to answer their children. Why do we dip twice? Why? Does that say that anywhere in the Haggadah? I'm not sure if that's the answer anyways, but it's one possible answer. But why do we dip twice? It's not clear why we dip twice. Why do we lean? We lean to show chayris. Does it say it anywhere in the Haggadah? At what point in the Haggadah do you tell your son, well son, I'll tell you, you want to know why we lean? We lean because we're trying to act like malachim, trying to show chayris, so therefore we lean. You don't tell it to him. So we didn't answer the question. So there's many answers given to this answer, but I saw a very interesting answer from Rabbi Miller. Before we say the answer, just pass out one more piece of Haggadah, one more interesting, sorry, the photocopy didn't come out perfect, but this is the best we could do with the limited time. So right before where the page sort of gets cut off, it's Pasuk Chaf. So right before the page gets cut off, it's Pasuk Chaf. It says, Kishalcha bin chamachar lemar. When your son will ask you tomorrow, saying, what are these edus or signs? There are certain mitzvahs that we do that are edus, that Hashem created the world, or other things, v'achukim, and laws that don't have reasons, mishpatim, and and things that are more mishpat, judgment, like for benam chaver, laws, asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu eschem, that Hashem commanded you. So, this question is the question that's brought down in the Haggadah as the Chacham's question. And without getting into too much detail about the 4 sons, if anyone wants to come to the shir, we'll talk about it more. But this is not the answer that we give in the Haggadah. But if you look at the Chacham's question, does it mention Yitzias Mitzrayim or anything about Mitzrayim in the question? Is he asking, what are the Eidos HaChukim and Mishpatim on Pesach? Is he sitting around on Pesach asking you this question? Or he one day came to you and asked this question. Teach me the Torah. Teach me the Eidos, teach me the Chukim, teach me the Mishpatim. I want to know. So, how does this fit into the Haggadah? And let's take a look at the answer. I mean, if anyone sees, if you go back before, I didn't bring all the Psukim before, it does mention Mitzrayim once, but it does not, that's not the focus over here. I mean, there's all different types of things mentioned over here. We're not in the middle of the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. If you look at the other 3 sons' questions, they're all, I think, in Parshas Boy, and over there, it's the Sugya, it's the Parsha of the Seder night. And it talks about why do we, it's questions related to the Seder night and to Yitzias Mitzrayim. But this is in the middle of Eschana, and it's a review sort of the whole Torah. And in the middle, the son pops, there's a sugya. If your son asks you a question, what are all these things? Now, it doesn't say anything about Yitzias Mitzrayim. Let's take a look at the answer. V'amarta levincha, you should say it to your son. Avodim ayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim. We were avodim to para Mitzrayim. V'yitzienu Hashem b'Mitzrayim b'yad chazaka. Does that sound familiar? We just read that in the Haggadah, first line of the Haggadah. After the Manashtar is the first line. Avodim ayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim. We're servants to para Mitzrayim. V'yitzienu Hashem b'Mitzrayim b'yad chazaka. Hashem took us out with a strong hand. V'yiten Hashem oisim oisim. Hashem made signs and wonders. Gedolim v'roim Mitzrayim b'far. From Paro and Mitzrayim. V'chol beis le'ninu, and all his family. He took us out from there. Laman Havi Yisanu lost his one to give us the land that he commanded to our forefathers, that he swore to our forefathers. Hashem and Hashem commanded us to do these things. To fear him, to be good for us, to keep us alive like today. And it will be a tzedakah for us. If we continue to do all these mitzvahs, so the guy, he's asking questions about everything, and we're answering him Yitzias Mitzrayim. And then when we theorize, we say Hashem commanded us all these mitzvahs. It doesn't mean all the mitzvahs that apply to Yitzias Mitzrayim. Simple shot. It means all the mitzvahs. So why is he bringing Yitzias Mitzrayim? The answer is, like we said before, whether you learn like the Rambam or you learn like the Bahag, either way, the pshat is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzislicha Meretz Mitzrayim. I'm Hashem who took you out from Mitzrayim. This is a prerequisite, or the first mitzvah for Kol HaTorah Kula. The answer to every single question is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzislicha Meretz Mitzrayim, because every question is, why do we listen to Hashem? So if someone says to you, why do you keep kosher? The answer is not, well, Hashem understands the world because he created us, and he created the different animals, and he created everything, and he understands that pig is not healthy for a person, and therefore he told us not to eat pig. Now that is true. It's true. But that's not why you keep kosher. You keep kosher for one simple reason. Because Hashem told you to. That's it. Why do you blow shofar? Well, we blow shofar because it brings up Zichronenu to Hashem, and that makes us have a better din. That's not why we blow shofar. We blow shofar. It might be a chelik of the reason, but we blow shofar because Hashem told us to blow shofar. Kol HaTorah Kula, the prerequisite for Kol HaTorah Kula is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzisich Meretz Mitzrayim. When they came to the king in the mashal and they said, please make us rules. So what did the king say? First you have to be Makabel my Malchus. After you're Makabel my Malchus, then I'll tell you, then I'll make Gzeras. But I can't make you a Gzera until you're Makabel my Malchus. Because my Malchus is a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite for you to be Makabel my Gzeras. So if your son comes to you and asks you, in general, he asks you any question. Why do we wash our hands in the morning? Why do we tie our right shoe or our left shoe? Why do we do anything? The answer, certain things are midrabanan and whatever, but even drabanan is because we're supposed to listen to them. Why do we do anything? Every single mitzvah. You know what we say before we make a mitzvah? If you pay attention to the brachos, you say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvaysav, he was mekadosh the tzvah v'tzivanu. A big chilek of the bracha is that Hashem was mitzvah us to do it. That's why we do it. Al Natil Sedam, Hashem was mitzvah us to do Al Natil Sedam. Hashem was mitzvah us to learn. Everything, the answer to any mitzvah, the answer to any question is, Amarta levincha, avodim ayinu, far b'mitzrayim. So Rabbi Miller wants to say that that's the pshat also. Your son comes and asks you these 4 questions. It's interesting pshat, but he wants to say the answer is avodim ayinu, far b'mitzrayim. It's not 4 questions. He could have asked 613 questions. And if you include all the drabanans, he could have asked, thousands of questions. And the answer to every single question is one answer. Let's get back to the root. If we're discussing each specific question, we could discuss each specific question. But if you want me to answer all 4 questions, and really 613 questions with one answer, the answer is Avodim Ayinu, far b'mitzrayim. We were servants to Paro. Hashem took us out. And since Hashem took us out, we're Hashem's Avodim. And that's a prerequisite for Kol Torah Kula, and that's the answer to every question.
So is it the basis to remove any doubt, so if you can't figure out an answer, that you won't have doubt anymore because you recognize Malchus?
Yeah, doubt in what? Doubt in why? There is no such thing as doubt in why. So all the people who write Tamei and Mitzvahs, it's a very, there was a whole, I don't know exactly the history, but the whole concept of Tamei and Mitzvahs is an interesting concept because you know the reasons why Hashem did it. Hashem doesn't say the reasons, so how do you know the reasons? So the answer to that question is, everyone who writes Tamei Mitzvahs understands that Zois Chukas HaTorah. We learn out from Zois Chukas HaTorah, talking about Paraduma, that the whole Kol Torah Nikachayk, the whole Torah is a chayk. Everything in the Torah is really a chayk. The reason why you keep everything in the Torah is because Hashem told you. Now, we could give Tamei Mitzvahs to be mamtik the mitzvahs, to make the mitzvahs sweeter, they're easier to follow, they're easier to understand. But someone who only does mitzvahs because they understand them, what happens when it comes to mitzvahs that they don't understand? Or what happens if they understand something else? Let's say they understand that I think that it should be a mitzvah that we should all give up everything we're doing right now and go to Haiti and start rebuilding. I'm not saying it isn't, but whatever. We all feel bad for them and we understand. We do sympathize with them, but it's still not a mitzvah in the Torah that everyone should drop everything and go to Haiti. Maybe it should be. I think it should be. If we're going based on your understanding, so this is the love of Baal Tesifu and Baal Tigru. You can't take away, you can't add. There's 630 mitzvahs. Hashem made the commandments, and whatever the commandments are, that's what they are. It doesn't matter what you understand and what you don't understand, because Zois Chukas HaTorah, the underlying yesod of Kol Torah Kula is chayk. Everything is a gzeira from Hashem. B'mekabel the malchus of Hashem, it's a gzeira from Hashem. And on top of that, mitzvahs do have reasons, and they are good for you, and you can gain from them, and it is geschmack to hear them. It's mamtik, it makes it sweeter. It is geschmack to hear why we do mitzvahs, and it's moishach, it makes the person want to do it. And that's what there are svarim written about, and that's what people say to teach it. And if you go to someone who's not from, or whatever, it's not so simple to explain to them the concept of, well, Hashem's the king, and you have to listen. It's easier sort of to tell them, Shabbos is beautiful, it's a beautiful concept, it's such a pleasure, and the family enjoys it, and Hashem understood that everyone needs a break. And Shemitah makes sense because nowadays also they let the land lay fallow 1 year out of every certain amount of years. Like all the mitzvahs do make sense, and Hashem does understand the world better than we do, and he did put into to do whatever's best for us. But that's not the underlying yesod. There's a famous story that's told. I don't know if it bothers us as much, but when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, so the Gemara says, Kol Shana, that's Rosh, Mitchila, that's poor in the beginning, it's gonna be a bad year. And people used to get very scared. You don't have shofar on Rosh Hashanah. How can you not have shofar? If you don't have shofar, you have midas adin. Shofar brings the midas harachamim. It's ma'ala zuchreinenu. It's ma'ir the midas harachamim. So how can we not have shofar? How are we going to have Rosh Hashanah? We're going to have a din without shofar. So someone got up, I forgot, one of the Gedolim got up and he said, this is his speech. Why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Well, the Eibishter Gazat, Hashem told us to. Why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Because Hashem told us to. Why do we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Because Hashem told us to. Why don't we blow shofar this year? Because Hashem told us not to. End the story. If you're blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah because you're used to it, if you're blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah because of reasons, so then when this year you can't blow shofar, it's very confusing. But if everything's done because Hashem told you to, so now Hashem told you not to, so now you don't blow shofar, that's it. It's because Hashem told you to. So, just to sum up, and maybe just to add one more part, going back to the mitzvah, Anoich Hashem Lakecha, in this week's Parsha, I have it there still? So, the first of the Aseret HaDibros, there's a lot of parts, there's more questions that are asked, and there's more to discuss, but just some of the questions that we discussed. So we discussed Anoich Hashem Lakecha, Asher Tzeichicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Bebeis Avadim. So first question we asked, not in order, but one question we asked is, why isn't this in the beginning of the Torah? If it's a prerequisite for the whole Torah, why don't we put it in the beginning of the Torah? So we answered because first, Hashem wanted to act as a melech before he proclaimed himself as a melech. Or, Hashem wanted to be koina us Bebeis Avadim before we actually became his malchus. And just to add one more part over here, it's very interesting to know, when did we become Klal Yisrael? When did we become Jews? We became Jews by Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's when we became Klal Yisrael. We went from, when did we actually, the Gemara learns out in Yevamos, the whole idea of Gerus, the Gemara learns out from the process. It was a process. The process began by Yitzias Mitzrayim, and it culminated by Nasav and Nishma, by Makabel Torah. That was the process of turning us into Klal Yisrael. And we learn out, do we have to have hazah, sprinkling of the blood, do you need tefillah, do you need milah? It's all learned out from this process, because that's when we became Klal Yisrael. When we became, and it says like this, B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, when Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim, Beis Yehuda Me'am Lois, when Beis Yehuda went out from a foreign nation, Hoysa Yehuda L'Kodsher, we became Hashem's Kodesh ones, Yisrael Ma'am Shaloisa, we became under his rule. We became his legions, we became under his rule. We became Klal Yisrael when we went out of Mitzrayim. That's when we became Klal Yisrael. So only after we become Klal Yisrael, I acquired you. I made you mine. I acquired you to become Klal Yisrael. Now, Parshat Yitro is right over here, right? That's when it starts, at Nasav and Nishma, right when you became Klal Yisrael. And that also maybe answers your question why that's considered, according to many, the first mitzvah in the Torah. It wasn't the first mitzvah that was said. It was the first mitzvah to Klal Yisrael. It was the first mitzvah that was given at Har Sinai, because that's when we became Klal Yisrael. And really, the whole concept of every Yom Tov and the whole concept of so many parts of Yiddishkeit are to celebrate this one point, right? One more question that we could ask, just to discuss really quickly, is the concept of why are we always mentioning Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim? And even more difficult is, how are certain mitzvahs Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim? Everything's Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why is everything Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, and how is it Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim? And the answer is because anytime we do anything, it's Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, because that's when we became Jews, that's when we became Klal Yisrael. Every mitzvah is connected to Yitzias Mitzrayim, because every Yitzias Mitzrayim is Anoich Hashem Lakecha, that's when we became Klal Yisrael, and therefore every mitzvah is connected to Yitzias Mitzrayim, because that's when we became, that we're Avadim of Hashem. And that's why there's so many mitzvahs that commemorate Yitzias Mitzrayim, and that's why we're supposed to commemorate Yitzias Mitzrayim twice a day. But Rabbi Miller writes over there that if you're on a subway and you have a few minutes, you should think Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Because Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim is the foundation of Kol Torah Kula. And that's why the Seder night is such an important night. Because the Seder night is the foundation of Kol Torah Kula. Because that's when we commemorate Yitzias Mitzrayim, that's when we pass on to our children, and that's when we pass on to the generations the concept of Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Hashem is the king, and we are Klal Yisrael. That's Yitzias Mitzrayim. And that's what we said. You took us out of Mitzrayim. Why you took us out of Mitzrayim? Because that's when we became Klal Yisrael. As opposed to which is more general, but as opposed to us, that you created us. And that's what we say also, Beis Avodim, because that's when he acquired us. So that's a little bit the concept. And then we discussed the idea, is it a mitzvah or is it a prerequisite? Even the people who count it as a mitzvah, but it's still the first mitzvah. It's still the sort of the side of all the other mitzvahs. It's still the foundation for all the other mitzvahs. Some people say it's even more. It's not even a mitzvah. It's a prerequisite for all the other mitzvahs. So for those of you who do understand the lofty concept of Yitzias Mitzrayim and why Seder night is such an important night and why it does make sense, it says we're supposed to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim Kol Yimei Chayecha, not just on the Seder night. But to have a proper Seder night and to really be able to experience the Seder night properly is really the goal of why I try to give a shir on the Haggadah. And anyone who would like to come Tuesday nights, Hashem started next week, we'll go through the Haggadah. We try to just do Parshat in a way that it's not too much to say by the Seder. And I also have a lot of it written up, so I could give you a copy before the Seder so you could have it.
What day?
Tuesday night at 8:40.
8:40?
8:45, I'm sorry. 8:45 to 9:30. Marv's at 9:30. Starting next Tuesday, not this Tuesday. So everyone's invited, and we'll go through the Haggadah slowly and talk about it. The first shir will actually be very connected to this. We're going to talk about the shaila of why is Kiddush one of the four kaisos. Kiddush, if anyone wants to think about it and look at it, Kiddush is, we say Kiddush by every Yom Tov. What does that have to do with one of the Daled kaisos? It's just Kiddush. I don't know, what does that have to do with part of the Daled kaisos? We'll discuss that a little bit. How Kiddush is a chelik of the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Is it a Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim?